Dann begrüße ich schon mal ganz herzlich. In gewohnter Weise, ich erstmal auf Deutsch, Herr Koppitz nachher noch mal ein bisschen auf Englisch. Wir haben heute Dr. Halpern aus New York nicht dabei. Die war am Wochenende hier zur DIWH-Eröffnung. Das haben vielleicht manche von euch Schülerinnen mitgekriegt. DIWH, Deutsches Innovations- und Wissenschaftshaus, das 6. weltweit, wurde bei uns in San Francisco eröffnet. Darüber sind wir natürlich stolz. Darauf sind wir stolz. Waren ganz viele Vertreter von vielen Unis da, unter anderem auch zum Beispiel der TU Dresden, vom KIT, von der TU Berlin, ja, verschiedene Unis und vor allen Dingen verschiedene DAAD-Vertreter, die sich darum kümmern, dass auch ihr später, wenn ihr darauf Lust habt, zum Beispiel ein Stipendium kriegt für ein Austauschsemester in den USA. Da waren natürlich die DAAD-Vertreter von Berkeley da und die überhaupt für unsere Region Zuständige. Und ich sehe jetzt gerade, die 11. Klasse sieht noch ein bisschen aus, als ob sie suchen, reinzukommen zu uns. Winkt mal, wenn ihr uns schon hört, die Elfer. No, die winken noch nicht. Doch, sie hören uns. Genau. Also dann würde ich sagen, fangen wir an. Besonderes Willkommen an die Zehner, die wieder da sind aus dem Betriebspraktikum. Ich bin gespannt, was ihr nachher erzählt. Und natürlich auch unsere Abiturienten besonders begrüßt, die fast in ihre letzte volle Schulwoche gehen. Und die Elfer und Neuner nicht minder. Also herzlich willkommen. Wir haben heute einen Gast, Daniel Köhler. Herzlich willkommen, Herr Köhler. Äh, Daniel wird über Cybersecurity reden und ihr erinnert euch vielleicht, dass der vorhergehende Redner Professor Meine war, also nicht unser vorhergehender, aber der vorher schon mal über Security geredet hat. Und da passiert es uns jetzt ein zweites Mal, dass wir den Doktorvater und den Doktoranden hier haben. Also Herr Köhler, Daniel promoviert bei Professor Meine am HPI. Das ist für euch nicht überraschend. Der Weg zum HPI für Herrn Köhler ist vielleicht so ein bisschen überraschend oder ein bisschen anders als bei den anderen. Deswegen wird er darüber gleich noch selbst was erzählen. Herr Köhler hat in Berlin Abi gemacht, hat danach erstmal an der School of Economics, also ich sehe da nämlich einen Economics-Kurs, glaube ich, in Klasse 10, der hier teilnimmt, an der School of Economics seinen Bachelor gemacht, dann hinterher seinen Master, alles im dualen Studium zusammen mit IBM und ist jetzt zum Promotion ans HPI gekommen. Ich bin aufmerksam geworden auf Herrn Köhler, ehrlich gesagt, über eine ziemlich reißerische Werbung vom HPI. Die hatten da die Anonymous-Maske immer drauf und haben, was sind DDoS-Angriffe? Und weshalb ich dann Frau Dr. Helpern kontaktiert habe, um Herrn Köhler hierher zu uns zu kriegen in die Vorlesungsreihe, ist, weil da auch mit erwähnt war, was könnten DDoS-Angriffe vielleicht für eine Auswirkung auf den Krieg Russland-Ukraine haben. Also ein ganz super aktuelles Sicherheitsthema hier. Und deshalb übergebe ich jetzt noch einmal für ein kurzes englisches Wrap-up an Herrn Koppitz und dann hören wir Herrn Köhler.
All right, good morning from my side as well. I just want to say to everybody again, the lecture series, the lecture itself is going to be recorded, but for the Q&A session afterwards, we're going to switch the recording off so that you can talk freely and especially you can talk in your own preferred language, so switch to whatever you wish. Herr Köhler will answer in that language, I guess, or in whatever language he chooses. Okay, so that's from my side. So then back to Herrn Köhler.
Yeah, thank you very much for the introduction. Hello, nice to meet all of you. I hope all of you can hear me just fine. Maybe just give me like a short thumbs up if you can hear me. Perfect, 1, 2, 3, many thumbs up. Thank you for the introduction. And yes, let me start off with 1 or 2 words about the war in the Ukraine and the DDoS attacks about which were already mentioned. At some point in the talk later on, I'm going to mention DDoS attacks and what that is and what that happens. I will not dig into too much detail as for what I've prepared in the slides, but in the Q&A session afterwards, we can like go into any direction which you wish. I also hope that I will not double the content too much from what Professor Meine apparently already maybe mentioned at one point or the other. My goal was that I can provide a short lecture to you today, out of which you can maybe take one or two pieces of information which you can apply to your daily life afterwards, so that you are better prepared for the online world and for the upcoming years, and hopefully you're not gonna get yeah, target of some cyber criminals, some cyber attacks. Anyhow, as already was teasered, basically mentioned, I have quite an interesting, I think, way of where I came from, what I did. So I started doing my A levels in Berlin and completed them in 2014 already. In those A levels, I had like a focus on math and physics, as well as I did take bilingual courses. So I was very lucky that my school offered the possibility to do bilingual A levels, basically. So we had a couple of subjects taught entirely in English, which really helped me. Yeah, basically my English skills, I think. But I think you're in a similarly lucky position to be able to kind of grow up and learn in a bilingual way. You're going to be able to use that experience in the upcoming years. I know you've probably heard that like 100 times, but believe me, you're going to, in 10 years, you're going to know what this all was worth for. And then after finishing my A levels in Berlin, I went and did a so-called integrated bachelor's degree, which is in German, in case one of you wants to Google for it, because as I heard, you're going to prepare for what you are going to do in the upcoming years as well. In German, it's a duales Studium. It's pretty common over here, and the idea is that you basically do a normal study at some higher education institute. But in the meantime, you have a partner company. And for me, that partner company was the IBM, and I studied business information technology with them. And then, as you might know, like when you're in your studies, you normally have like 3 to 4 months of study period, and then you have a period in which you have free time and in which all the students go out and party and whatnot. And if you're not interested in partying, you can take such an integrated study, which allows you to go and work full time with the company you're doing the study and gain practical insights, gain insights on what you might want to do in terms of position in that company later on. So for me personally, for example, I went in the first of my 6 internships, basically. I went to Hamburg and did a bit of software development there. Then later on, I went to Stuttgart, where the headquarter of IBM in Germany is, and I did a bit of marketing there. Basically, cold called lots of people and realized that's not what I want to do for my life. Then I went to Hamburg again, and afterwards I got into security in Berlin, and this is where I decided to stay. So I also did my 5th and 6th internship with the security team. And afterwards, I also did my master's degree together with the IBM, together in the security team, where I basically decided, well, now that my bachelor's is complete, I got too little technical information, and I want to learn more about the techniques behind everything and like technology and whatnot. So I decided to study IT security and forensics. And this is basically where I got full time into security. However, during my master's, I was kind of, well, not really happy with some of these courses and how they were presented. So I decided, well, these interesting topics should be brought to students in a better manner. And therefore I decided, well, let's try teaching myself. So I went to the HPI to be able to work as a research associate in the field of IT security, but basically with the focus on teaching good content, teaching good courses, engaging and getting a spark in the students for IT security courses. And therefore, I also took over major teaching roles, I think, on our Open HPI platform, where we have like online courses, which you can just consume self-paced at any time. But we're going to come into that direction. So what is kind of my research goal is so basically if you're doing a PhD, you have this abstract thing called the research, what you want to do, and you have a field in which you're going to do it, and basically mine is security. Okay, but what do I do in security? So kind of where I come from is, okay, we can design secure systems. We need experts for that. Experts are there, okay, but those systems need to be used by somewhere, by by us users, like each and every one of us. And that means like young people like us, but also, for example, my grandparents, my parents, they want to use systems as well. And they want to understand or be capable of using them securely as well. So we have ideas or things like user authentication. What that is, we're going to come to that in a minute. It's basically your passwords. And somehow we need to get the people to understand how security works and how to operate or be in their lives in a good way. And this is where the aspect of security awareness and security education comes into place. Because I think today with the ongoing digitalization, I think everybody needs security or needs at least a basic like security 101. And therefore, now that I presented a bit about myself and the research goal, I mean, all of you know, and I mean, you are like generation technology. I have had the privilege of growing up with technology already. I think I got my first smartphone in like 10th or 11th grade. I guess for you, or I bet for you, it's been way earlier that you got your first smartphone. So today everything is digital, and means our security is coming into every area of our lives. Like 10 or 15 years ago, you would maybe do your emails online, but that would be about it. But today, everything is digital. Our lives are digital. I'm sure you have like friends who you connect with over the internet, maybe online games you play, whatnot. So I thought let's maybe just very shortly get to know each other. And originally, like the last time that I did such a presentation, where I had much younger students which I talked to or pupils which I talked to, I would ask them like, when did you get your first smartphones? I think by now, I mean, we're in 2020. I think for you guys, this question is probably obsolete. And similarly goes for the question of like, who of you uses social media? I'd guess that for each of you, like be it TikTok or be it Instagram or WhatsApp, everybody of you uses some kind of social media. So we're not going to go too much into that. But what I'd be interested in is just maybe talk to your neighbor real quick for like 30 seconds and just try to estimate how many different accounts on the internet for online services you have. And then maybe just throw me a couple numbers. Just talk to your neighbors for like 30 seconds. And then maybe somebody wants to either type in chat or just answer via audio, just a couple numbers, how many online accounts you think you have. So Mr. Kobus thinks he has about 20. Okay. So I'd guess you might be approximately 100 in class 11. Yeah. Okay. I'm not surprised about that. And while the others are still thinking or still typing, there have actually been studies from like 2 years ago, so those numbers might be slightly outdated, where people analyzed like all these emails you get when signing up, and they found out that the average American person, if I'm not entirely mistaken, yeah, exactly, all these website registrations. The average American person, if I'm not mistaken, has about 120 accounts linked to their name. So that's quite a lot. And now let's get into the security field. Like we're using passwords for all of those accounts. So how many accounts do you have? Just again, talk with your neighbor really quickly. How many accounts do you have where you have different passwords instead of using the same password for each and every account? Not really. Some of you might be might be put on the spot here. I totally understand, but that's why we're here for. So, without like diving into the evaluation, the outcome of that question, I think that just basically is the motivation of why we've met here today. we all have plenty accounts online, all those dump registrations for everything for the 25th online shop in which I want to get this new thing which I want to have, and I need an account and I need a password, and obviously I'm likely to just take the password which I remember, because why remember a new one, correct? So good passwords are annoying. You need a password for every account. Every online shop wants to have some kind of password. For many online shops, you can't even, or I've identified myself that oftentimes you can't even place an order anymore without registering. So many online shops have like a checkout as guest feature, but some don't. And somehow each of those services has its own password policy. So even I think I have a couple good passwords which I like to use, or differentiations of those passwords, but oftentimes I can't even use them because every online service thinks they have to do something different. So suddenly for one online service, I can't use a backward slash or I can't use a forward slash, because why? I don't know. So each of them has their own ideas, and that's why I totally understand that you as a user just oblige or are very probably just using easy passwords. But why do we need those passwords at all? What do like passwords have to do with IT security? Let's take a step backwards. The internet, as we know it, and as you probably use it every day, is a network of networks. So what that means is like multiple computers put together are considered a network, and the internet is multiple networks put together. So for example, I here at my home, I have a network where I have my computer, my laptop, my speakers, and also stuff like my PlayStation. And this network is connected to my internet service provider, the telecom in my case. And telecom connects me to this big connection of other networks called the internet. And on the internet, we are now having different services which provide some kind, or different companies which provide some kind of service. So, for example, your webmail, where you would go, sorry, to send your emails, or just any kind of web browsing activity. So, for example, Google is a service on the internet, and also like email sharing and whatnot. And just a small differentiation here. So the internet itself is the underlying technology. What you probably all know by saying the internet, like when you open up your web browser, so for example, your Safari, your Firefox, your Chrome, whatever, what you're using there is an application on the internet called the World Wide Web. This is why, I don't know if any of you remembers, but 5 or 10 years ago, before every website you wanted to visit, you always had to type www dot website name. Today, you don't have to do this anymore for most of the websites. Most of the browsers do it themselves. But this was originally for the www, the www, the World Wide Web, an application on the internet. So we as a user, we are there now with all our end devices, and we use those services in the internet, correct? You got your smartphone, you get your desktop computer for online gaming, you got your tablets, you got your PlayStations, and all these devices you have, they use some service on the internet. But maybe let's go into a bit more detail. How do we actually use those services? Because we can't magically, I mean, it appears like we magically connect to them, but how does it actually work? So you at your home or your parents probably have some kind of router, or also your school right now. They're going to have some kind of central router where the devices connect to, be it via cable, a LAN cable, or be it via Wi-Fi. And then this router basically connects to some kind of home connection. There's different technologies out there. We're not gonna touch that boring stuff. And then this home connection is basically operated by your internet service provider. So as I said, for me, the telecom, also like AT&T is a big telecommunication provider, and they are providing the access for your house, your infrastructure, your network to the internet. So they are then connecting you into that network, and using that, like when you want to connect to a server, your device connects through your router, your home connection, the ISP, into the internet. In the internet, it goes some random way, which is the most optimal way. There's different technologies to determine that, but that's not going to be interesting for us just today. And then your requests, kind of the connection from your device suddenly arrives at the service you wanted to use. And then you can get information from that service. You can exchange information from that service, and you can basically use anything in the internet. For example, a web page or whatnot. But you see, most of this connection, particularly the area that's in the internet, is not really under our control. So we have to be aware of attacks, of malicious people out there. And I mean, theoretically, if we have all our devices under control, we have like the router secured, the home connection should also be secured, because that's like something in my wall, in my hallway. So I'd be pretty sure that's only me who can access it. At least that's what I hope. So the earliest place where like an attacker could be would be at internet service provider level. So theoretically, whenever our connections are arriving at the internet service provider, they are out of our control. And from there on, they could be attacked in the internet. So the attacker could attack any of these connections on the internet. It could attack different services on the internet. It could attack different servers on the internet. It could attack different devices on the internet. And they could try to listen to our traffic. Okay. Well, that doesn't sound too good for us. At least that's what I want to convey. So let's take a step back. We know that there's many different ways of attacks that could happen, but what do we actually try to do with IT security? What do all those high-earning IT security professionals try to do in their daily lives? They try to protect three central security goals. And those are all seen or primarily seen for communication between, for example, two communication partners. And those are, for example, one, confidentiality. So the information which is being sent from one party to another is only allowed to be read by the parties who are authorized to do so. So if I say I want to have information which I want to securely send to some of you, then only those of you who are intended to send the information to are allowed to read that information. For all others, they might have a look at it, but they can't understand it. And then the next one is integrity. And integrity basically means that the information shall not unnoticeably be changed in any way. So, for example, it is important if I want to make a bank transfer because I need to pay, I don't know, food for my dog, and I want to send them 50 euros, then it's pretty important that not somebody somewhere in between changes those 50 euros to 500 euros, and I suddenly pay like 10 times the price. And then the final goal is availability. So that a service or an information should be available whenever I request it or need it to be available. Those are like the three for security goals we base all our technologies upon, or we try to reach with all our technologies. And let's go into one example. So for example, we teased earlier the distributed denial of service attacks. Denial of service attacks have the core idea that we want to make a service unavailable. So if you remember, we want to attack this third security goal of availability, and there's plenty different options how I can do that. So the goal is we want to force or limit availability of functionality of service. Why do we want to do this? I mean, for example, if we could limit the availability of, I don't know, the Amazon web shop, then Amazon would probably suffer pretty big losses just within an hour because people cannot buy their stuff there. And I don't know if I'm a competitor, for example, maybe more in a niche topic or somewhere where there's like 2 or 3 other online shops and then my online shop, and suddenly my online shop is the only one which is available. Well, guess where the customers would go? So impacting availability can be a valid attack target for a cybercriminal. All oftentimes the impact on availability is also being used to extort service providers. So for example, give me protection money or your service will be unavailable. This is how cyber criminals can actually make money. And also you could, like, as I already said, hinder your competitors or create monetary impacts on other institutions. Distributed denial of service now is the idea that we want to bombard a service with requests from multiple sources. Because in the earlier day of the internet, I would have, for example, one computer where one web page is run on, and I could probably take that computer offline with my computer alone. But today, more and more web pages are served in cloud infrastructures, and I don't want to get into too much detail here, but cloud infrastructures have like a major hardware capability, and I can't take them offline anymore with my own computer. So I need like multiple computers to attack those services. And this is then when I get multiple people involved, basically multiple end devices involved to perform a denial of service attack. This is then called a distributed denial of service attack, because exactly the huge amount of concurrent requests will overwhelm any system and will then cause a crash, for example. And this all happens because each request to a server binds resources on the server side. So for example, I don't know, storage or network bandwidth or processing power. I mean, in the end, all those services on the internet are computers like you have in front of you, like you have in your home, and they have somehow hardware technically limited possibilities. And whenever we are able to like throw a larger amount of processing like efforts to the system than it can handle, then it's not going to be able to handle requests from other customers anymore. Typically, DDoS attacks can be performed by botnets or by reflection attacks. And let's have a short look at both of them, just very high level. So the idea of a reflection attack would be that an attacker, for example, sends an email with a fake sender address to some web system. And because that web system sees the fake sender address, it reacts. So basically, it sends some kind of reply packages to another system, and thereby we cause that other system to go offline. This particularly works with certain protocols on the internet, which are able to, for example, you throw in just a tiny bit of information, basically in this first message from the attacker, and then it generates an impressive amount of information out of it. So imagine you are requesting a video from YouTube. So you're just gonna send to the server, hey, give me this video from YouTube, and YouTube is gonna throw you like a gigabyte of data, apparently over time, but let's take this metaphor. So YouTube is going to throw you a gigabyte of data, and if we imagine a case in which one attacker or multiple attackers would send YouTube lots of requests where they say, well, Daniel Köhler requested this video, and suddenly YouTube is going to send me like hundreds of gigabytes of data, then my systems would crash. So this is the idea of a reflection attack. And similarly goes for botnet attacks. Not really similarly, but the similar outcome is created by botnet attacks. So a botnet is some kind of server infrastructure or group of IT devices which are controlled by an attacker. And for that course, it is not of importance like what kind of device it is. So it could be a computer, it could be like a server. It could also be a smartwatch, an IoT device. I don't know, a smart vacuum, which is cleaning your living room. So whenever we have any of these devices which get controlled by attackers, they are considered so-called botnet. And then the attacker just got to tell to his botnet, okay, please all go and request everything from this server. And suddenly not only like the attacker's computer, but all of the 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 devices in his botnets are going to request a certain resource, a certain web server, and most probably that web server is not going to be able to handle the load of requests anymore. And this is basically where then the topic with the Ukraine crisis comes into play, because in the beginning of the war, and as I said, I don't have slides prepared on that, but I'm very happy to go into more detail in the end. In the beginning of the war, there were a couple of Twitter posts from the hacker collective Anonymous, where they asked users to basically join in on denial of service attacks against Russian infrastructure. So basically, they said, okay, we are going to perform denial of service attacks on, for example, Russian websites, and they asked their users or their Twitter followers to do the same with all of the devices they have, which obviously will be then an easier task for all of the attackers. However, on the other side, yeah, side of the hand, when performing such activities, you are acting illegal. And IT crimes are nothing that's not trackable. On the internet, it might seem as anonymous as it seems, but we all are communicating on the internet via like basically addresses like we have our home addresses. And whenever you request something from a website, you are telling this website, well, this is who I am, because they need to send you some data back. And so on the internet, everything is traceable, is what I want to say. So please do not, and there's the short block that I'm going to have on this, please do not chime in with just any questions from any questionable third parties to just do something because you think it might be the right thing to do. So particularly for this thing, it's particularly in Germany. I don't know in detail the laws on IT security over there in the US. In Germany, it's highly illegal to do such things against, to basically attack systems which you're not allowed to or which you're not operating yourself. So just don't do it. Stick to your own security efforts. And maybe this is also where I should continue with this talk. Which targets do we need to be aware of? Because in the end, everybody of us can get a target of a cybercrime, can get a target of a cyber attack. It is very unlikely that we as persons right now get target of, like, for example, a DDoS attack, like it is targeted against the Ukraine or the Russian infrastructures. But also we as normal people can or are getting targets of cyber criminals more and more, because cyber attacks get easier and easier. And what can the cyber criminals attack? We all have our devices, independent of whether it's a smartphone, a computer, I don't know, a smart fridge which is connected to the internet. They all have some sort of hardware. They have some sort of operating system. So operating system, for example, for the smartphones would in most cases either be an Android or an iOS. For desktops, probably for you like a Mac OS or Windows or Linux derivation of some kind. And then we have applications on them. And in theory, hackers are able to attack any of those if they have like the right access tools, if there's the right vulnerabilities in the in any of the above. But also, as we said, hackers are able to attack the internet and devices on the internet, because essentially any server which is located somewhere on the internet is depending or is consisting of those three, as we mentioned earlier. So every server on the internet is just like our computer at home. It looks a bit different. It feels a bit different. In most cases, it doesn't have a screen, but it all consists of hardware, operating system, and software. And whenever there's like security vulnerabilities, security issues with any of those, these will be found on users and devices as well as on devices in the internet. So we need, obviously, we as users need to be aware particularly of our own things, of our own devices, and also of our own online identity, let's say. And let's dive a bit into security best practices. I offered that hopefully you're gonna get something which you can take away from this talk, and I think this would be the first sum up slide, let's call it. For smartphones, computers, smart devices, I don't know what basically any kind of device which you connect to the internet. Or also, you should probably do it to the devices which you don't connect to the internet. These are like the best practices that you can do. So program updates sounds as stupid as it sounds. And I know there's plenty of updates that are annoying you each and every day. And probably you should take the time to do all of them rather sooner than later, because those program updates, they close security vulnerabilities. So they basically close the doors that attackers could have against your system, that attackers could have to actually like steal or manipulate your data or to actually cause trouble to yourself. So whenever you see updates available, I know it's annoying to like restart Windows and install the updates, but try to do it every once in a while, rather sooner than later, whenever you have time. Next thing would be trusted sources for whenever you're installing any applications or any software. So for example, for applications on your smartphones, probably the app stores, like the official app stores. So either the Play Store or the Apple App Store. Also on Windows, even though I admit that it's far more complicated to use Windows just using applications from the App Store. Even though the App Store is a very good way to get somewhat secure software, or at least trusted software. So particularly, you should be very cautious, but we're going to have that on a later slide as well. You should be very cautious whenever you are downloading some kind of software from the internet, which normally has to be paid for. So on like 7 or 8 resources you find on the internet, it has to be paid for, and the ninth then promises a free software. Then I would be very cautious if I were you, because most times free software isn't free, and you're gonna have some trouble with that sooner or later. Furthermore, let's talk very shortly about antivirus scanner. Antivirus scanner has pros and cons. One disadvantage of antivirus scanner has been seen also in combination with the Ukraine conflict, because a big Russian antivirus producer, basically company called Kaspersky, they have a antivirus software, and for example, over here in Germany, our BSI warned from using that software anymore, because antivirus software has very deep or very strong privileges on your operating system. So if somebody was to do something malicious to that software, it could impact your system very strongly. However, on the other hand, antivirus software is going to help you against 95% of all the other threats, of all the other easy downloads, easy malware that would be able to infect your system. So I highly recommend just installing a antivirus software. For smartphones, I have to admit that it's more complicated to find a good antivirus software. For desktop computers, so for example, for Windows, the Defender is doing a good job nowadays. So just keep that one running. And if it says, I deleted something, and you're not entirely sure that it should not be deleted, then just leave it deleted or quarantined and do not like restore it. And then finally, and this is the most annoying part about IT security, backups. Whenever you have it the first time that your system crashes, or you get infected by some malware, and I don't know, work from the last week or the last week and a half, when the last time was you saved it onto an external like USB drive, and you suddenly lose that week or week and a half of work, you're going to be very frustrated. And I personally think that's probably an experience which everybody needs to do once before he actually starts believing those talks about backups. I luckily only lost one USB stick due to just physical loss once, which was frustrating enough. And since then, I basically have multiple versions of backups. So I don't know, call me over secure, but I have like one version of backup which is on here in my living room or on a network attached storage, which I have. and then I have two physical backup locations, additional backup locations, one at like my parents' house, where I put like one hard drive of data, and one in the house of my fiance's parents, so that whenever like one of any of the three houses, I don't know, burns down, I still have another backup available. All right, let's not talk too much about that because we have a couple of things remaining, and I didn't tease passwords just because I wanted to annoy you or wanted to step on your toes. But passwords are one of the central means of authentication on the internet. Normally the process is you enter the password into a website. The website then transfers the password, or the password is transferred via the internet to the website. In most cases today, this is already encrypted, so the confidentiality of your password is secured. And then the website checks the password against its password database, and if that check succeeds, so you know the right password, then you are logged in. So far, so good. You probably all have dozens of passwords for dozens of accounts. We talked about that earlier, and all of these should be good passwords. So I would ask you to, again, for like 30 seconds, talk to your neighbor what you currently think what makes a good password. Okay, now that you were able to discuss the 2 or 3 main ideas that you have and that every website tells you, let me try to tell you. So I think, or we think, a password should be at least 12 characters long. It should contain ideally uppercase, lowercase letters, as well as symbols and special characters. And most importantly, it should be different for every account. So now would be the next question: how many good passwords do you actually have? I mean, each of you can probably answer that for themselves. I think if the age that or when I was your age, and if I would have been in the same position 8 years ago, I would probably have answered that question with 0. I have to be completely honest, and that doesn't surprise me. So the question is, why should passwords actually be different? I mean, you're not going to tell them anyone, correct? Maybe your Netflix password so that other people can watch videos over your account, but that Netflix password is probably going to be at least different from your other passwords, I hope. But there's also this thing called password leaks. So often service providers configure their password database wrongly, and that means passwords are stored in plain text. So when attackers get access to such a password database, they know all the email addresses and the passwords that are used with the email address. And that happens very often, several hundred times a day, that small password databases or even big password databases. I think last year there was a major incident with T-Systems or T-Mobile, where they leaked, I think, the data of 40 million users. So password leaks are there all the time with all different companies. And if you have a password as a service and you reuse that same password for other services and the password gets leaked, obviously an attacker could get access to each and every of your account. And don't get me wrong, we as normal persons are not priority target, but attackers have all this shit automated. So whenever there's a new leak, they are just going to take email addresses and passwords from those leak, and they're just going to try it against the top 100, the top 1,000 web pages and try to see which account do they get access to. And whenever they hit an account they get access to, they're going to see what can we do to that account. And then it gets frustrating even for us because they're going to find something they can do with even our accounts. So you are in danger if that happens to you. So what can we do against that? On the one hand, there's like in retro perspective services which you can use. So for example, we as a HPI offer the identity leak checker, where we collect all those password leaks, for example. And you can just go to the website, sekhpi.de/ilc, or scan the QR code. And insert your email address there, and you're going to be sent an email whether your password or your email or also something like your credit card data or your address or your name was seen in any of the recent leaks. So I think currently we have more than 13 billion user accounts, or roughly 13 billion user accounts collected, which we saw in different leaks. So also, if I input my email address there, I also get the reply or the information that my email together with two of my passwords has been seen in recent leaks. So if you see your password or your account in there and you know you're still using that account or probably the same password as you had used at the point at which the leak was created, you should definitely change it because it's just on the internet and everybody could take it and use it. There's a similar webpage called Have I Been Pwned? It has a pretty similar approach. Sorry, just a slightly different data set. So you can check your email addresses for both of the web pages. For Have I Been Pwned, you actually also have the option to check a specific password which you want to use against the database of passwords which have previously been leaked, just to identify whether that password would be very unique or whether it's very common and has been used 100 times already. And now comes the thing which takes the heavy lifting off of you. And I already saw in the chat earlier that that some of you actually already know password managers, and I'm very happy and a bit surprised about that. I wouldn't have imagined that. Password managers do the heavy lifting for you. They help you keep good passwords for all of you. There's basically three different types of password managers. Offline password managers. The advantage is they are offline, they are just on your device. No third party has access to any of your passwords or any of your data. The disadvantage is they are local and on your device, so you need to somehow synchronize them from one device to another device, which is a daunting task. And if your device breaks where you got all your password on there, you're gonna be stuck with no password at all, so you're gonna need a backup again. Then, yeah, two software examples: 1Pass and 1Password and KeePass. Then we have online password managers. Those have the advantage that they are synchronized across multiple devices, and a theft of a single device or single piece of hardware would not need you to cause to have a backup, to have all this trouble because you have the passwords on all of your devices. However, you are somewhat dependent on the service provider that you are using. So, for example, I don't know, does it work whenever I'm not connected to the internet? Do I have a local copy of the database? Or how confident am I that the provider actually does its job good or in a very good manner? And here's a couple examples of those. So, for example, LastPass or Bitone, those are often paid services. And also the iCloud keychain could be considered an online password manager. And finally, and this is probably the easiest thing or the go-to, which I would propose you to do after this presentation, maybe not after this presentation, maybe in the afternoon or something, password managers in the browser. They are so easy to use and they provide lots of benefit. So all the popular browser vendors, so for example, Firefox, Chrome, Safari, they offer password managers in the browser. So for example, for Firefox, you can just store your passwords, and sometimes they even perform checks against password databases. So if they actively check if the password has been leaked, and oftentimes they also offer the possibility to synchronize the password across different devices or across the same browser on different devices. So for example, if I use Firefox on my smartphone, I can similarly use Firefox on my browser or on my desktop computer, and it's going to synchronize my account and have passwords on all of my devices available. Similar goes for like the iCloud password storage. It does it in the same way. But you have to, just one thing which I want to remind you of, often the master passwords of those databases are disabled by default. So you should make sure to enable like some kind of master password, because otherwise the passwords are just there without being actually secured. They are probably just a text file somewhere, and that's not good. just enable one master password. You just got to remember that master password, and everything else is going to do the password manager for you. Exactly. This is one short example from Firefox DocWise, basically the Firefox solution of a password manager, where you would also see that you have a vulnerable password because it was potentially leaked somewhere or just is not very good password. And finally, let's come to one interesting last topic. Emails and text messages are a very interesting attack vector. So I don't know if you can read this depending on the text size or the screen size that you have in front of you. So earlier this year, about a month ago, I got a message from Professor Meinel, called or with a subject, "A minute, please." Let's have a look into that message. He basically told me that he needs a favor from me and I shall send him an email. I mean, what's very odd about this is that he writes to me in English, and I personally know that this is not the usual email signature which he uses, which is why I thought like, well, this is very strange. And luckily, most email programs have the option to show you who the actual sender address is instead of just the name of the sender, because that name can be very easily faked. Don't get me wrong, the sender address can be faked very easily as well, but oftentimes it's not. So a colleague of me got a similar message from Professor Meinel, which was a bit better because it was at least in German. It is, I mean, I'm just going to read it for you quickly. Haben Sie einen Moment Zeit? Ich habe eine Bitte, die diskret behandelt werden muss. Ich gehe jetzt in ein Meeting, keine Anrufe, antworten Sie einfach auf meine E-Mail. Okay, this is a message which could have been sent by Professor Meinel, and he urges that there's something important that you're not supposed to call him because he's going into a meeting. Okay, this could also be part of the reality, but then for me now, or for him as well, this is again a very odd signature for him, because we know out of context that he uses an iPhone. So why should the email signature of him be sent by mail from Samsung? And then furthermore, when you look at to the actual email address this mail has been sent from, it was sent from onlineoffice.germany.me@gmail, which is definitely not Professor Meinet's email address. So this was also a fake email where apparently or supposedly Professor Meine was asking one of us colleagues to do something. And then I have one other example of a malicious email. So some kind of thing which I received, some kind of supposedly PDF document which has been shared by some shipping company, even though I didn't order anything. And one thing which threw me off is that there's this reply external forward, even though there's just one email in there. And furthermore, if I hovered over the supposedly PDF document, it would show the document ending .htm. So it was definitely not a PDF document which was sent to me there, but also some kind of strange thing which you don't want to touch. So email addresses, oops, doubled animation, sorry for that. Email attacks are very common today, and they are called phishing attacks. With phishing attacks, attackers try to get you to open unsafe attachments or send some money somewhere or follow some links to web pages. And the results of such could be basically unlimited. So ranging from malware getting installed to your device to account details of some online account compromised or money transferred to a third party. So what should you do in your daily life starting from now? And this is, I think, the second to last slide that I'm going to have to do to improve your daily life. Healthy suspicion is the key. So we can provide all these technical possibilities without healthy suspicion of you as users. They're not going to bring you anywhere. So suspicion is the best security method out there, and it's the most cost-effective security method out there. If something sounds too good to be true, it probably isn't. So for example, this software that's usually going to cost 100 euros and it's suddenly for free, it probably isn't. If somebody is writing to you because you won 100,000 euros in the jackpot, it probably isn't. Don't trust everything you see in an email. Be very cautious, particularly if you get emails which you didn't expect to. So for example, you didn't order anything but get this strange tracking link. Maybe just don't click on it. I mean, either it's going to arrive at your home, at your front porch, or it's not going to arrive, but you're not going to miss something when not clicking on this email address. You can also verify, and this is a very good practice, verify link destinations by hovering over them. So oftentimes a link will display, for example, hpi.de. And if you just hover over it with your mouse pointer, it's going to show up the actual location. And that might be, I don't know, google.com/some site/strange thing/download malware. I mean, it's not going to say download malware in the link, but get the concept of it. Verify sender email addresses. And if a email sounds strange to you, then maybe call the person or create a new mail to that person where you write him directly and like verify that this mail actually came from him. And finally, one thing which you can do to your email client is often configured in a way that it doesn't automatically like load external images or external content. It's sometimes going to make it easier to spot fake emails as well. And I think that's it from my side. I hope you're not as tired as the dog, because if I am not mistaken, you get a full day of class ahead. For me, the day ends over here in Berlin. And yeah, I hope maybe like one or two of you are going to change something after today, be it like adopt a password manager or get rid of an old password, get maybe rid of an old account which you're not using anymore. So I don't know how much time we actually have left for questions. I'm very sorry to have taken so long, but I would be open for questions now.
Okay, so thank you for that interesting talk.